as dominant as a shutout win for the Panthers on Sunday night. It's all tied up at 2, and the pressure seems to be back on the Leafs.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, May 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first order. So the Florida Panthers defeat the Toronto Maple Leafs by a final score of 2-0 from Amerant Bank Arena in Game 4 of the second round between them and the Leafs, and tied the series at 2. And as much of a dominant performance for the Panthers here, as the Panthers iced the game late with just less than 8 minutes left in the third period for them. But the logic for the Panthers was pounding the Leafs defense and stopping them in the neutral zone multiple times. And here joining me on this edition of the show to break down this 2-0 shutout win for the Panthers over Toronto, he is formerly of Panther Parkway Radio and the OG, one of the OGs from here at Locked On Panthers, Frank Rekas. Frank, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Good to be here, Armando. After watching a great game, I know we got a lot to talk about, and thanks for having me here.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you, as always, for joining. Last time you joined the show was when we broke down the Eastern Conference final win for the Panthers over the Rangers at the time. But let's talk about, it's been almost a year since. But my goodness, Frank, and the thing is, once that puck went in from Brad Marchand in Game 3 going into this one, I really had a good feeling. Just the Panthers just getting their mojo back. The last 40 minutes for them, and then past the 10-minute mark for them. And then coming into this one, I mean, it was a full 60-minute performance for the Panthers. I mean, starting in the neutral zone with Brad Marchand with the defensive play, Aaron Ekblad bringing the boom on John Tavares. And then, for the Panthers, and more so for the Leafs here, it really started with themselves shooting them in the foot. 4 penalties in the first period. And the Panthers were able to convert. It took them a while. Power play 1 struggled for a good amount. It was power play 2 that was really the one gain, creating the shot opportunities for them, gaining the zone. But then on this 4th power play for the Panthers, Carter Verhaeghe getting that shot in, a nice backdoor feed by Matthew Tkachuk. Hey, the logic is keep your stick on the ice, right, Frank?
Absolutely. You and I talked briefly before the show, and you had asked me, how did I feel after the first 2 games? And I was like, I wasn't worried. I knew that if we could take Game 3, the momentum would start to change. And obviously by winning in dramatic fashion in overtime, that's definitely a way for the Panthers to carry that through, and which they did in Game 4 here. And right from the start, I mean, four power plays in the first period. They had to convert on one of them. Unfortunately, they did. Otherwise, that's kind of like reverse psychology a little bit. Toronto kills 4 penalties, and then all of a sudden, maybe the momentum shifts to them. But the Panthers held their ground. I think the ice was tilted for most of the game in the Maple Leafs, defensive zone. A little bit in the second period, maybe a little bit in the third, especially towards the end of the game. But I think for the most part, the Panthers controlled it. They were forechecking like madmen, which that's their style, that's their game. That's the way that they do things. And what I also liked is that they kind of kept everything on the outside. There wasn't a lot of traffic in front of Bob. There wasn't a lot of stuff going on in the middle. Most everything was from the outside. 1 shot, no rebounds, no multiple shots on Bob all at once, and he made some great saves, especially late in the game.
Yeah, only two breakaway chances that the Leafs had in this game. And even there was one save that Bobrovsky made right before the Panthers scored the first one. There was one where Mikkola goes up in the slot. There's a feed from all the way to Austin Matthews, and then just a quick glove save. No putting mustard on it. Just as cool as a cucumber on that save for Sergei Bobrovsky there. But I mean, more shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, I mentioned that it was 2 seconds from the Panthers about to end their power play, and then Leafs go to the box again on that delay of game call by on Oliver Ekman-Larsson. More on Oliver Ekman-Larsson a little later. But also, even when they did have a power play in the second period, I mean, more midway through it, they go to the box for them, where Mitch Marner trips Tomas Nosek. And that was a power play where the Panthers were in the Leafs zone, getting so many shots on goal, quick outs, and then how spread out the Leafs were in the neutral zone. Even Sam Reinhart and Barkov were playing give and go, short-handed. How impressive is that?
Yeah. And the Panthers were doing what they normally do when they're on their game, frustrating the opponent. And you can see that happening by, the mistakes that the Leafs were making. Obviously, all those penalties that they were taking, which weren't very smart. They weren't good penalties, if you want to call a penalty a good penalty, because sometimes there are times to take a good penalty. None of them were good, but the frustration level is mounting, and I got to believe that they're feeling all kinds of pressure going back to Toronto being 2-2, and their back is now against the wall. I mean, it's only going to be game 5, but they don't want to come back here down 3-2.
Yeah. And for the Panthers here in the first period, there was a whole line change that they got where John Tavares loses Sam Reinhart, and then they were able to get the third line and put the top line back on it. And there was another one where the Toronto Maple Leafs iced the puck twice. It was Jake McCabe was there for 2 minutes and 30 seconds of it, and Morgan Riley was able to get in the middle of that shift for them.
Yep.
And even how prepared the Panthers were, and also the management in the bench for Paul Maurice. Matthews drew two penalties on the night, but Paul Maurice likes to put Aleksander Barkov and Sam Reinhart as the second unit after for them. But how prepared they were to put Sam Reinhart and Aleksander Barkov as the first unit, knowing that the top line was already on the ice, knowing that they're not going to get a little bit, and there wasn't a TV timeout for one of the penalties. So right. It's like little mind games and little chess games that Paul Maurice is constantly trying to put together, and that's another example of that for Maurice and staff.
Well, obviously you got the home ice advantage, so you got the last change, right? You could change immediately when you don't get the matchup that you want. Number one, but number two, he's so good at managing the bench, and I think that has a definite advantage anytime that you're in a situation like this where you're trying to even if you're trying to tie up a series, but definitely when you're trying to contain the momentum and build on that momentum and carry it through. He does such a great job of managing his lines. And, previously it was the Barkov line going against Matthews, but now it doesn't have to be that, when they're at even strength. He had the Lundell line against him. So why not take advantage of that when you can? And I think they're doing a great job of containing Matthews, and I guess I'd like to say he's been a non-event for the most of the series, if I can say that.
Yeah, multiple times on that power play where he was missing the net, and there was a stat throughout the playoffs on who's missed the net the most in the postseason. It's been Austin Matthews, and I mean, listen, when you have so much pressure, and it's not just because they're the Leafs, but whenever they're suffocating you as much as they are, mm-hmm. there's a little bit of the old saying, the gripping of the sticks too much. For example, the Matthew Knies breakaway that he had on Sergei Bobrovsky, Seth Jones loses them, and then breakaway opportunity, flat out misses the net. Doesn't even Sergei Bobrovsky's not even there to make a save there. I'm like, wow, talk about a lucky break, but at the same time, it's not lucky for them, because the Panthers psychologically get into the heads even when they're not pounding the defense, is just trying to say, if I don't take this shot now, I might not get another one. And we know that Bobrovsky is a hard goaltender to beat 5-hole for them as well. So that's another
Yep.
thing about just overthinking on shots.
Yeah, and I mean, there was nothing fancy about that breakaway. I mean, he just shot. He didn't try to deke or do anything. And I mean, had he scored, that could have changed the whole complexity of the game. You know, we could be staring overtime in the face. A lot of things could have changed. But you're right. You know, they're in a situation where they're holding the sticks a little bit too tight, trying to make that perfect pass, make that perfect play. And every time they had the puck, there was a Panther on top of them. Talk about, you know, winning puck battles, especially in playoff hockey, is very, very important. And I think the Panthers controlled that for most of the night. I think they also controlled it for most of the other night, Friday night's game. And that's where you're going to have the edge in playoff hockey, is winning those battles, controlling the puck in the corner, and keeping the offense away from you as much as possible. And when you're a puck possession team like the Panthers are, that just works to their advantage. And they just kind of suck you in, and you're forced on taking one shot, no rebound. All of a sudden, Panthers are coming down, taking shots on you. And I know there was a heavy favor to the Panthers in the first period. I forget. I looked at one point. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was more than double shots midway through, you know, almost through the end of the first period. If it wasn't for Joseph Woll, that game would have been lost in the first period.
No doubt about that. And even the Leafs were making some line changes in the second period, in the third period, excuse me. And even Knies had a great save with the leg within the first minute of them. And then that Nylander stop that he got through Ekblad. But hey, Ekblad also made up for it by deflecting Nylander's pass. He forced the pass there in the neutral zone, and Sam Bennett with an amazing move as there was a little bit of a miscommunication from the Leafs, McCabe and Chris Tanev, and then easily getting that puck into basically for the Panthers extend their lead. And I kept saying internally, I didn't tweet this publicly, all this team needed was a multi-goal lead, and then keep the shift short, gain the red line, shoot it in, set up in the neutral zone. And hey, look what we got with around a minute left. Nico Mikkola going in the corner, pinning the puck, similar to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. So it's just the big boys going to work for them as well. But we got a lot more, no doubt. We got a lot more to get to on this edition of the show, where we are going to continue talking about this 2-0 win for the Florida Panthers over the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to discuss our 3 stars of the game and when we knew the game was won. We'll discuss that more next on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check on your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. Segment 2 here on this Monday, May 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day, as the Panthers defeated the Toronto Maple Leafs by a final score of 2-0 on Sunday night to tie the series at 2, winning both home games. Here with Frank Rekas, formerly of Panther Parkway Radio and the OG of this podcast, the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So, Frank, now let's discuss our 3 stars of the game for the Panthers. So, number 3 star for me is Sam Reinhart. How active he was in the defensive zone, getting those draws, getting the shots on goal, shorthanded, 7 of them for the Panthers. And even on the give and go that I mentioned earlier, forcing 3 Leafs behind the goal line to feed Aleksander Barkov out in front as well. Just so much hockey IQ for him all night long for him, setting the tone defensively, and even had to play with a different winger at one point with Evan Rodrigues. Evan Rodrigues going to the locker room in the game, which we'll get to more of that a little later. Second star for the game for me is Sam Bennett. Iced the game, 4 shots on goal, 8 hits for him. Outstanding edge work for him there to keep the puck on his forehand right before getting it past Joseph Woll. And then number 1 star for me is the guy who got the shutout, Sergei Bobrovsky. 5th career shutout, 51st win for him in the postseason. And all of his 5 shutouts, I mean, to think 2 Vezina trophies, multiple playoff appearances, one of the biggest upsets in Stanley Cup postseason history back in 2019 against the Tampa Bay Lightning, didn't get a single shutout until he came to the Florida Panthers. And his 5 shutouts have come in the last 3 postseasons. So brick wall Bob, as we like to say, gets the number 1 star. How about you, my friend?
I'm going to change up just a little bit. I'm going to go Carter Verhaeghe as the 3rd star. Scores the opening goal, his 5th goal of the playoffs, and just a clutch performer. And we all know that he kind of goes through these moments where he's kind of silent and not necessarily very visible. But when you need a big goal, he pretty much can do it, and he definitely did it tonight, scoring on the power play later in the first period to give the Panthers that 1-0 lead. My 2nd star of the game, probably my favorite Panther, Sam Bennett. Such a hard-nosed player. He's skilled. He plays with physicality, and he's another one of those clutch guys that will either deliver the big hit or score that very important goal. And what I loved about him on the Panthers' 2nd goal is the patience he showed. You really weren't sure if he was going to pass, was he going to shoot, or was he going to wait? And he didn't pass, he didn't shoot, he waited, got Woll to go down, and then took the shot just over his it was his right pad, and to give the Panthers a convincing 2-0 lead. And then lastly, the number 1 star, of course, Sergei Bobrovsky. What a gutty performance. I mean, he gave up 4 goals the other night, but a shutout, and looked like he was in complete control, wasn't nervous. He wasn't overly tested, so to speak, but when he had to make the big save, like the Matthew Knies breakaway, well, he didn't have to save that on the breakaway because he completely missed the net, but there was a goal a goal shot late in the 3rd period where he made the save, kept the shutout alive, but definitely earning his money. So he's my number 1 star tonight.
No doubt. I just did a quick calculation real quick for Carter Verhaeghe. You mentioned the ups and downs for him. So he has 4 goals in 9 games. And so obviously he just got over 20 in the regular season. And if the postseason were an 82-game point pace, he'd be on pace for 36 goals.
See? Yeah.
So it just goes to show not to take up for him for sure.
Yep, because I know some people were a little bit down on him during the season, but come playoff time, he's just, I don't want to say he's a different person, but you can definitely count on him to score that big goal when you need it.
No doubt. And the fact that there's so much attention around the Panthers as well, from Barkov to Sam Reinhart as well. And to think that we mentioned Paul Maurice putting the right buttons, and then how you could switch the Evan Rodrigues back on that top line and then Verhaeghe back on that to Bennett line. Of course, they've had a lot of runway together as well, even though that goal tonight was on the power play for them. The fact that there's at least a sample size for them at least gives them the confidence that he will find a way to score in different situations for them. I believe we're going to have the same one on this one. When it comes to the moment where we knew the game was won, mine was the Sam Bennett goal that he scored on Joseph Woll. The Panthers just needed a multi-goal lead to play their shutdown hockey, and crazy, Frank. They went 2 full seasons of not losing, regular season and postseason, of not losing when having a lead going into the 3rd period. obviously that happened 4 times after January for them in the regular season, but it still hasn't happened in the playoffs for them. So once again, the Panthers going into a third period with a lead, and then finding a way late with that goal by Sam Bennett.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. That's the same time that I kind of knew the game was, under control. But what I liked is that even though they had control of the game, they were still looking for that second goal. They wanted that second goal, not so that they could breathe and, take their foot off the gas, but almost to kind of step on Toronto's throat a little bit. Now you have that second goal. You can be, a little bit more aggressive if you want. You can sit back if you need to. But that was the key point, I think, in the game. And just in the fashion that it was scored, I think all the momentum is behind Florida right now. Toronto's got an uphill battle. I know it's 2-2, but everything is in the Panthers' favor. Like I said earlier in the show here, I think the ice was tilted in the Panthers' favor for almost the entire night. I don't think Toronto really had too much sustained pressure at any point in time. Maybe on a power play, that might have been the only time that they would have. I don't think there was any sustained pressure at all at 5-on-5. One shot, they're done. Panthers are back the other way. And that's another thing that I like about the Panthers and the way that they play. Once they get control of the puck, they're out of their defensive zone and they're on the attack. And that's what I love about an up-tempo style that they play.
No doubt. And I'm looking at the time on ice on the opposition for like a line like Barkov. Not a lot of time against Matthews. It's going to be interesting to see how they readjust once Craig Berube does have the last change for them. Mostly a lot of times with the Tavares line, while Lundell was on that top line for against the Austin Matthews line for him as well. So that's going to be another thing that the Panthers are going to continue to do when it comes to just how they clog things and then just keep the pucks in their own offensive zone for them. But we are going to transition to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss the health of Evan Rodrigues after that taking the interference call from Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and also our thoughts on how the game ended and whether we think that the Department of Player Safety will end up doing something based on Max Domi's hit on Aleksander Barkov at the end. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Third and final segment here on this Monday, May 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. And I want to say a public congratulations to the Charlotte Checkers who won their winner-take-all game 5 against the Providence Bruins by a 5-2 win and only allowed 8 shots on goal. So now they advance and will face the Hershey Bears, as the Hershey Bears are trying to go through for a three-peat this year. And also, I want to start this segment with a little bit of this day in Florida Panthers history. May 12th, 1996, Mike Huff, double overtime winner in Philadelphia for the Florida Panthers to take a 3-2 series lead right before advancing to the Eastern Conference Final and then the Stanley Cup Final. Frank, I was 2 going on 3 when that game happened. So I know you've been in the market since its inception. So your thoughts on that game, the anniversary of that game, and then just how it's grown since, because you've been waiting for winning hockey for the Panthers, at least years of consistency.
Oh, yeah, I remember that series and that playoff run, and just a bunch of lunch bucket, hardworking guys. Mike Huff probably the epitome of that. Guys just grinding away, and I mean they were the surprise of the league. An expansion team that was 2 years old, maybe 3 years old at the time, and just took the Eastern Conference by storm once they got into the playoffs, and just proven that you get hot at the right time, you get a hot goaltender, and Van Beesbrook was on fire for the longest time. Those were some really, really great memories. Unfortunately, they ran into the buzzsaw that was the Colorado Avalanche and got swept in 4, but nothing to be ashamed of. That was a very proud moment for the Panthers. And then They kind of fell into the abyss for a little bit for a couple of years after that, but now it's really great to see them back on the right track. And I just love what Paul Maurice is doing with the team, and how competitive they are and how they're never really out of a game.
No, and May 11th today was a few years since the Panthers came back from 3-0 against Washington in the President's Trophy season. So May 11th was a 3-year anniversary of the game. So different types of history. Yeah, different type of style of play. We don't want to see comeback counts from that margin, but the Panthers are usually never out of it, as you said. But all right, let's go to the very important things when it comes to just the aftermath of this game. Evan Rodrigues, Jameson Olive did tweet that there are no updates on Evan Rodrigues, and that Paul Maurice said that he's going to need evaluation. I did not see a single angle that showed Oliver Ekman-Larsson delivering a hit to the head to Evan Rodrigues. It's probably anticipating the puck. The broadcast showed the angle that he was going at, and feel like more like a harder fall than it was the hit for him. It's funny because not funny, but I was kind of thinking after that embellishment call, I'm just thinking you can't call another one this time around. But for Evan Rodrigues, we hope that he's okay. And just your thoughts on that hit to begin with, because I thought the minor was the right call.
Yeah, I think the minor was the right call. I mean, definitely interference. Puck was nowhere near the play. I certainly can't say that Ekman-Larsson had him lined up. I don't think that was it either. I'm not going to call it an accidental collision, but I think he meant to hit him. But I think it was the surprise of the hit that kind of threw Evan's head back a little bit, and he went right down to the ice. It was not embellishment. I don't believe there was any intent in any way to injure or make any contact with his head. And I'm like you, I'm looking for an angle, but I didn't see it, where it would show something a little bit more conclusive. So I think it was the right call. I don't think there's going to be anything after that. I certainly hope he's going to be okay. But if that means, when Paul Maurice says he's going to go for further evaluation, they want to make sure that nothing is wrong and that he hasn't been, concussed. Because that would be a huge miss if we can't have him in the lineup.
And because the fourth, and I'm just trying to, maybe I'm thinking too far ahead with this, but the fact that the fourth line is intact for them, and the fact that obviously you can't separate that Marchand line for what they're doing. I think this is a really good spot for Mackie Samoskevich to go back into the lineup. And it's funny because I mentioned the Mike Huff goal. Evan Jovanovski during the first round talked about learning from the press box and how he was scratched during that same Flyers series, and he was able to watch things and then come back a lot stronger. And I think that if Mackie Samoskevich is going to be successful, it can't be on the fourth line. So maybe a great opportunity for him to go on that top line, use his speed. And as Aleksander Barkov are gonna and Sam Reinhart are gonna do their thing defensively, and then maybe and how great Mackie's hands are, maybe that's a good opportunity for him. But hey, we're gonna have to wait and see. So another thing I want to get your thoughts on at the end. Obviously, frustrations are high, emotions for both teams. That was not the first boarding call that Toronto had. We saw one in the first period with the Leafs on Carter Verhaeghe, Bobby McMahon, as Verhaeghe was dumping the puck into the zone midway through the first. And then at the very end, Max Domi taking a run at Aleksander Barkov, and Paul Maurice also saying that Maurice is going to be okay. And also says the league looks at those things very close, especially at the point in the game. That's their job. So, good PR answer for Paul Maurice there when it comes to that. Of course. So your thoughts on the Domi hit, because I thought it was not a good one, and I think I don't know if it's suspension worthy. Barkov was able to get up, but I do believe there's going to be at least a fine. But if there is a suspension, I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it was a chicken move. You can say frustrated all you want, but that's the kind of player that Max Domi is. Sometimes if he's on your team, I suppose you like him, much like Brad Marchand, right? You don't want to play against him, but if you have him on your team, you like him. But that was a chicken move. I didn't like it at all, especially with, hardly any time on the clock. I know you're frustrated, but, those kind of plays need to stop. And the only way you're going to stop them is by assessing a suspension. Is it suspension worthy? I don't know. But just because Barkov got up and doesn't appear to be hurt doesn't mean you can't hand out a suspension. So let's not look at whether you levy a suspension or not based on the player's ability to continue playing that game or the next game. That makes zero sense at all. I would be shocked if he got away with nothing. I'd be disappointed if he only got a fine. I'd be pleased if he got at least one game. That's just me. That's just my opinion. Hockey's a tough sport. You know me. We've known each other for a while. I love physicality, but in the right way. That's not the right way. That's not the right way.
Yeah. So we'll see what George Parros ends up doing. Former Panther George Parros when it comes to just how he evaluates things, because we just never know what they're going to do. It's just so unpredictable. So when it comes to that,
and that right there is a problem. It shouldn't be so unpredictable. You should have some sort of sense of feeling of, well, this looks like it's going to be a game or two, or 100% that it's not. But there's really never any rhyme or reason, and I think the league's have to come up at some point with some sort of, I don't want to call it regularity, but predictability, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, we will see when that does happen, and we'll get a tweet from the Department of Player Safety or something like that, and then we will update you here on the show whenever we do find that out. But Frank, any final thoughts before we sign off here on the night as the Panthers tie the series and look dominant as can be in Game 4?
I think they just stick to the game plan. I think that they'll be back home ahead 3-2, and I'm predicting Panthers in 6. They've found their wheels, and they're off till Wednesday, so that's good, right? I guess you could say we have an extra day. They have an extra day off because they're not going to be playing on Tuesday. And I think that after tonight's game, they can take a look at how well they played, take a look at all the positive things that they did, and just keep up that same, mentality. I think they're going to have to weather the storm in the first 5 to 7 minutes in Toronto and not just be defensive, but I think if they can score a quick one and take the crowd out of it, that's just going to be, in their favor. But they can't get too loosey-goosey. They can't, try to make plays. They got to continue with the same mindset and the same structure. If they get all out of whack and they try to play run and gun, then that's not going to have a good ending, probably.
No doubt. And the 2 days off are going to be important, and they'll have a practice in between, and then they'll fly up to Toronto, and then all the pressure is back on them, on the Leafs. That's the best part, because neither road team, was able to get a win, but the Panthers, just the chokehold that we've seen over and over again. That's the best way to describe it for them. But you guys can follow Frank Rekas on X at Frank Rekas, and we'll definitely have him back here on the show sometime. So Frank, thank you so much, and see you soon, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows in the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Frank Rekas, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.